in common crops, how much it's declined from 1950 through 1999. This is cantaloupe, 24%, 37 up to 69, 70% declines. Yellow corn up to 75% declines. Eggplant, honeydew melons, we could go on. It doesn't really matter which produce you're looking at. The nutrients in the crops that we eat have been declining. Conventional fertilizer, petrochemical-based fertilizer is simply unsustainable. Can cause air pollution, destroy the soil. We're running out of fertilizer deposits. Fertilizer causes water pollution. Looking at some of that in detail, that's Beijing during the day. Smog is actually a combination of the words for smoke and fog, smoky fog. Fertilizer has been contributing to that. A recent study by the University of California, Berkeley, chemists state that the increased use of fertilizers over the past 50 years is responsible for the sensational rise in nitrogen oxide in the atmosphere. And of course, this leads to other diseases. Now, many people associate smog with emissions from plants and vehicles, which is true, but that's actually been declining in recent years. You know, far from an arbitrary distinction, the USDA's National Organic Program makes a big difference between synthetic nitrogen and natural nitrogen, because synthetic nitrogen is not sustainable. We're polluting the planet. In fact, it's so bad that in China, they recently sold 8 million cans of fresh air in 10 days, at the equivalent of over $1 a can. Running out of supplies. Here's a quote from Foreign Policy magazine, a pretty well-respected journal. Our dwindling supply of phosphorus threatens to disrupt the food security across the planet. This is the gravest natural resource shortage you've never heard of. The Pacific island of Nauru has been one of the prime deposits of phosphorus. We've been extracting there since 1840. They've now run out. 80% of the island is now devastated. There's nothing left. You know, this is just one other of the extractive resources that we're using to grow food under our conventional growing system here. Food production is also a major source of pollution. This is the dead zone in the Gulf of the Mississippi, which is now the size of the state of New Jersey. We're touching on some of this in other presentations, and we're a little behind, so I'm going to go through some of this rather fast. But water promises to be to the 21st century what oil was to the 20th century, the precious commodity that determines the wealth of nations. It's Fortune magazine. I think a couple of these slides here show how much water it takes, 1.8 million liters to grow a bale of cotton. That's a lot. Now we hear about Earth being the water planet and how much of our Earth's surface is covered with water, but that's a little bit misleading when you get into the volume. This circle here is all of the water in the world compared to the mass of the Earth. Water constitutes only 0.07% of the Earth by mass, or 0.4% by volume. But now that water circle there is all water, including the seawater. We can't use the seawater presently for growing crops. So this circle here is the fresh water. But that includes the polar ice caps, it includes underwater, or underground water, as well as rivers, lakes, and streams. Now, if you notice this little dot right here over Georgia, that's the fresh water that's above ground that we can actually use. That's not much. And it doesn't generate more. What we have is what we have. We've done things technologically that would not have existed naturally. This is the Imperial Valley of California. They get rain basically 10 days a year, typically between 3 and 4 inches total for the entire year. Yet it's extremely lush. How is that? The Hoover Dam created Lake Mead, the 4th largest reservoir of fresh water in the world. The problem is that Lake Mead, is now the water supply for over 40 million people. Again, a country the size of France. The water table in the Lake Mead is dropping by 10 feet per year. The mighty Colorado River, or we may say the river formerly known as the mighty Colorado River, at the end is drying up to dust. You know, there's going to be wars over water, and we need it for agriculture. Currently, about 70–80% of the world's freshwater water supply is used for agriculture. And it's not just domestic, it's around the world. Here's the Aral Sea, and in 2000. I don't know, is it just me, or does that look like Bigfoot's footprint? And, this black line here is where it used to be back in the 60s when it was made. This is how it is in 2000, 2005, 2010, and today. Drying up. That was once a fertile valley. That was that water supply fed that region of the world. Now, peak oil gets a lot of the news, but we can handle peak oil. You know, they're all alternative sources of energy. They're all no alternative sources of peak water or peak food. What we have in water is what we're going to stay with. If the wars of this century were fought over oil, the wars of the next century will be fought over water. And of course, lack of water leads to drought. We're losing prime farmland because of drought. Over the last 25 years, every state has lost land, with Texas leading the way, having lost 1.5 million acres of farmland. Iraq was once a cedar forest. And well, last week I heard it hit 110 degrees. And that's without the heat index. That's the first stage of becoming a desert. Iraq is done, and then when the soil no longer feeds the plants, we start turning into desertification. Since 2000, China has lost nearly 1,400 square miles to desertification. That's roughly 900,000 acres per year. The Yellow River no longer reaches the sea 200 days of the year. The drought in China is dwarfing the drought that we had in the U.S. in the 1930s. Now, natural disasters do affect scarcity and definitely the perception thereof, but that can be just as bad with price gouging and food shortages, food riots. But when you lose topsoil, you have substantially reduced the amount of arable farmland in both quantity and quality. That's something that's not easy to get back. And for animals, which rely on water a great deal, it's even worse. The U.S. herd of cattle has dropped by 60%. Likewise for Argentina, another major cattle growing country. Other problems we have, here's the topsoil, how fast we're losing it. China, 57 times more soil is being lost than being replaced. Europe, 17 times. America, 10 times. Again, this is all unsustainable. We cannot continue what we're doing. Here's some of the dust bowls that have existed around the world. Look at those pictures. Pesticides. I mean, this isn't the typical picture of a farmer you see from a Norman Rockwell painting, wearing hazmat suits. Now, it wouldn't be so bad if the pesticides actually increase yields, but here's a study showing that crop yields were reduced by the use of pesticides. National Academy of Sciences. And the pesticides that we use, a very small percentage actually goes to the intended application. The rest runs off and negatively impacts the environment. And then to top it all off, we have governments trying to regulate and control food. You know, food shortages can destroy governments, and politicians know this. So what do they use the power to do? They try and control the food supply, the prices, the imports, the exports. They even control your attempts to grow your own food. In some areas in the U.S., it's illegal to have a garden, illegal to raise your own chickens, to have your own milk supply. But many people believe that government has the Midas touch. That, you all know what that is, right? Everything you touch turns into a muffler. That's right. If you really want to screw it up, get the government involved. In Argentina, they put on a high export tax on cattle. In just 2 years, Argentina went from one of the world's greatest cattle exporting countries to importing cattle. 2 years. Excess regulation in California. They make the farmers provide shade for the workers. Now, I'm not against shade.